Hello. Tonight we begin not with a battle or a name carved into stone, but with a moment of waking. You open your eyes to a sky that feels impossibly large, pale blue already washed thin by wind, with no ceiling, no corner, no shadow that promises shelter. The air is cold even if the sun has risen. It carries dust, grass, and something animal. You are not in a city. You are not on a road. You are standing somewhere in the heart of the Eurasian steppe, in the early 13th century, at the height of the Mongol Empire. So, before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories like this. And if you're listening late at night, feel free to leave a comment with your location and local time. These stories travel far, just like the people we're about to meet. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. There is no clear sense of where you are because there are no markers to help you decide. No walls, no signposts, no towers on the horizon. The land stretches outward in every direction, rolling gently like the surface of a frozen sea. Grass bends and rises with the wind, and that wind never truly stops. It presses against your face, your ears, your thoughts. In this world, space itself is the first challenge you face. You have arrived in a time when the Mongol Empire is expanding faster than any empire before it. From Korea to the edges of Eastern Europe, power flows not from stone capitals, but from movement. Yet standing here, alone, that power is invisible. There are no banners, no palaces, no guards announcing authority. And still, authority is everywhere. The steppe is quiet in a way that feels unnatural to someone used to settled life. Not silent, the wind makes sure of that, but empty of the familiar human sounds that reassure you. No church bells, no market voices, no distant hammer on wood or stone, just grass, wind, and sky. The absence of noise becomes its own presence, filling your head until you notice your own breathing more than anything else. This is where you wake up, not as a warrior, not as a Khan, not even as a merchant with a destination and companions. You are an ordinary person, dropped into a system that does not notice individuals unless they disrupt it. That perspective matters, because survival here does not begin with courage or ambition. It begins with orientation, and orientation is exactly what the steppe denies you. In most medieval worlds, power announces itself physically. Castles loom, city walls define safety, roads channel movement and trade. Here, there is none of that. The Mongol steppe has no permanent borders you can see. Territory is not marked by stone but by memory, kinship, and control of movement. To someone unfamiliar with it, the land feels unowned. That feeling is dangerous. The Mongols did not need walls because walls slow you down. Their world was built for speed, for adaptation, for living lightly on land that cannot be easily tamed. A traveler from a settled society would instinctively look for permanence, a building, a road, a fence, but those instincts fail here. The steppe offers no such reassurance. Distance becomes difficult to judge. The horizon looks close, but walking toward it changes nothing. After an hour, it is still just as far away. Without landmarks, your sense of progress dissolves. Even time begins to stretch oddly, measured not by bells or routines, but by the position of the sun and the rhythm of wind and fatigue. And then there is the wind itself. It is not merely weather. It is a constant force that shapes everything. The way people dress, the way they travel, even the way they think. It dries skin, cracks lips, stings eyes. It carries sound far and erases it just as quickly. A shout might travel a surprising distance or vanish completely depending on its mood. The wind does not care. You might expect fear to arrive suddenly, but instead it creeps in quietly. A subtle awareness that you are exposed, that there is nowhere to hide. In a forest, danger feels close. In the steppe, danger feels distant, and that makes it harder to predict. You can see far, but you cannot see everything. This openness is not freedom, it is vulnerability. Somewhere beyond the horizon, people are moving. Entire communities, with their herds and homes, traveling along seasonal routes refined over generations. You cannot see them yet, but they are part of a system that already knows where you stand, even if you do not. The Mongol Empire is not static. It breathes, shifts, expands. And you have woken up inside it. There are no neutral spaces here. Land is used, watched, remembered. If you walk in the wrong direction, you may cross an invisible boundary not marked by stone or sign, but by expectation. The people who belong here know these boundaries intuitively. You do not. Power, in this world, is not centralized in a visible capital. It is distributed through loyalty networks, kinship units, and military organization. Tens, hundreds, thousands people arranged, not by geography, but by obligation. Even alone, you are not truly outside the system. You are simply unclassified. And unclassified things are unsettling to any empire. The Mongol rulers did not govern by micromanaging daily life, but they did enforce order with absolute clarity when it mattered. Obedience was assumed. Awareness was expected. Ignorance was not an excuse. Standing here, with no knowledge of the land or its rules, you are already at a disadvantage you cannot easily correct. The sky above you feels close at night and overwhelming during the day. Clouds move fast. Storms appear with little warning. The sun can burn and abandon you within the same hour. The environment does not adapt to you. You must adapt to it immediately or suffer the consequences. This is the first lesson of the steppe. There is no buffer between you and reality, no infrastructure to soften mistakes, no margin for hesitation. Even before hunger or cold or law enters the story, space itself demands competence. You may notice something else as you stand there, a strange absence of drama. No music swells, no enemy charges. The danger is not loud, it is patient. It waits for exhaustion, confusion, and small errors. The kind of errors ordinary people make when removed from everything familiar. In the Mongol world, heroes are made by systems, not by individual defiance. And you are not here to become one. You are here to experience what most people experienced, being carried along by forces larger than themselves, often without understanding them. As the light shifts and the wind changes direction, you realize that waking up was the easy part. The land has not challenged you yet. It has only introduced itself. And somewhere out there, beyond the line where grass meets sky, movement has already begun, because in this world, nothing waits for you to catch up. And that movement carries the day forward, pulling light higher into the sky and revealing what the land has been holding back. As the hours pass, the steppe begins to show you its other face, not the quiet vastness of morning, but the physical reality of living without shelter. By midday, the sun is no longer gentle. There is no tree to step beneath, no wall to cast a reliable shadow. The grass reflects light upward, and the sky offers it back down again. Heat gathers on your skin and has nowhere to go. Sweat forms, then dries almost immediately, pulled away by the wind before it can cool you properly. Thirst arrives earlier than you expect. This is the first misunderstanding of the steppe for someone from a settled world. You assume exposure is temporary. You think of weather as something that happens to you, not something you live inside continuously. Here, climate is not an event, it is a condition. The Mongol steppe is a land of extremes compressed into short spans of time. Summer heat can scorch during the day, only to collapse into sharp cold after sunset. Winter does not simply chill, it penetrates. Temperatures drop far below what the human body can endure without preparation. And preparation here is not optional. It is learned behavior, passed down through generations, encoded into daily routines you do not know. Storms arrive quickly. Clouds gather without warning, carried fast across open land. Rain does not fall politely. It lashes sideways, driven by wind. Hail can follow heat within the same afternoon. Lightning has nowhere to hide, and neither do you. There is no solid structure to retreat into, no threshold to cross from danger to safety. For the nomads of the steppe, this unpredictability was normal. Their lives were built around it. For you, it is exhausting. Your body begins to register the problem before your mind does. Muscles tighten from constant wind. Eyes ache from light and dust. Your skin cracks. Breathing feels slightly wrong, too dry, too sharp. You realize how much of your everyday comfort once came from architecture walls that block wind, roofs that trap warmth, floors that separate you from frozen ground. Here, there is only the earth. You might spot a yurt in the distance, low and round against the land, almost blending into it. To an outsider, it looks simple, temporary, even primitive. But that impression is deeply misleading. The yurt, or ger, is one of the most refined survival technologies ever developed for this environment. Its shape deflects wind rather than resisting it. Its layers trap heat in winter and release it in summer. It can be dismantled, transported, and rebuilt in hours. Every element has a purpose. Nothing is decorative, and yet, even standing beside one, you would not know how to live inside it. You would not know how to position it correctly against prevailing winds. You would not know how to manage airflow through the smoke hole. You would not know how to regulate heat without suffocating yourself or losing warmth. These are skills learned over a lifetime, not instructions written down. Shelter here is not just a structure, it is a practice. Without it, sleep becomes a problem almost immediately. The ground pulls heat from your body faster than you expect. At night, the temperature drops sharply, and the wind finds every gap in your clothing. You shift constantly, trying to conserve warmth, but exhaustion works against you. Sleep comes in fragments, shallow and unsatisfying. And poor sleep compounds everything else. Your judgment dulls, your reactions slow, small tasks feel harder. In an environment that demands constant attention, fatigue is dangerous. Cold, especially, is unforgiving. In winter, exposed skin can freeze in minutes. Breath crystallizes in the air. Metal becomes painful to touch. Even inside a yurt, fires must be managed carefully, fuel rationed, ash cleared. Outside, without that knowledge, hypothermia does not announce itself dramatically. It creeps in quietly, mistaken for simple tiredness. Disease follows close behind exposure. Wind carries dust and microbes. Water sources are limited and shared with animals. Cuts heal slowly in dry, cold air. Infection sets in easily when the body is already stressed. There is no concept of resting until you recover. The world does not pause because you are unwell. This is why settled people often broke quickly on the steppe. Not because they were weaker in spirit, but because their bodies were trained for a different rhythm of life. They were accustomed to shelter as a given, not as a skill. Remove that assumption, and everything else begins to fail. The Mongols understood this deeply. They knew that the land itself was a filter. It selected for those who could adapt, and quietly removed those who could not. No malice required, no violence necessary. Exposure did the work. Clothing here is layered, practical, designed to be worn constantly. Boots are built for riding and walking long distances. Fur is used where cloth fails. Even then, nothing is wasted. Everything must serve more than one purpose. Comfort is secondary to function. Your own clothes, whatever they are, were not made for this. They chafe. They fail to insulate when wet. They dry poorly. You begin to understand that discomfort is not temporary. It is cumulative. The body becomes the weak point, not because it is fragile, but because it is unfamiliar with this level of demand. Hunger, thirst, cold, heat, fatigue, none of these are fatal on their own. Together, they wear you down. They narrow your focus. They make long-term thinking difficult. And the steppe punishes short-term thinking. Nomadic life required constant awareness of weather patterns, grazing conditions, seasonal movement. Decisions were made not for today, but for weeks ahead. You meanwhile are focused on the next hour, on shade, on warmth, on relief. This mismatch matters. By evening, as the sun lowers and the air cools abruptly, you feel the accumulated strain. The land has not attacked you. It has simply refused to accommodate you. That refusal is enough. You may notice how quiet your thoughts have become. There is no energy left for abstraction or ambition. Survival has compressed your world into sensations, cold fingers, dry mouth, aching back. This narrowing is not failure. It is the body doing what it must. For the Mongols, this state was familiar, managed, integrated into life. For you, it is disorienting. As darkness approaches, You look again toward the low shapes on the horizon, yurts, herds, movement, and understand that shelter here is not a place you find. It is something you belong to, or you do not. And as night settles fully over the steppe, with cold rising from the ground and stars burning sharply overhead, you realize that the land has already asked its first question of you, not whether you are brave or clever, but whether your body can endure what tomorrow will bring. And tomorrow does come, quietly, carried on the same wind, but now your body wakes with a new, sharper signal: hunger. Not the mild discomfort you can ignore, but a hollow awareness that sits low in your stomach and spreads upward, thinning your patience and focus. On the steppe, hunger rarely announces itself dramatically. It grows slowly, almost politely, until it occupies every thought. There is no breakfast waiting, no familiar smell of bread or grain. The idea of a morning meal, as you once knew it, simply does not exist here. Food, in the Mongol world, is not a choice, it is a function. The nomadic diet is built around what moves with the people. Animals, sheep, goats, horses, cattle. From them come meat, milk, fat, blood, little else. Grain exists at the edges of the empire, traded or seized from settled societies, but on the open steppe it is rare. Vegetables are almost non-existent. Fruit is seasonal and limited. The land does not support fields. It supports herds. For the Mongols, this diet was efficient, nourishing, and deeply familiar. For you, it is a shock that begins before the first bite. Meat is eaten boiled or dried. Fat is prized, not trimmed away. Milk is consumed fresh, fermented, or turned into hard curds. Even blood is used, sometimes mixed with milk or drunk fresh in emergencies. Nothing is wasted, because waste means vulnerability. Your body, accustomed to carbohydrates and variety, reacts badly. Without bread, rice, or vegetables, digestion feels wrong. Energy levels fluctuate unpredictably. Hunger does not fade after eating. It lingers, confused by unfamiliar nutrients. The first time you are offered food, you may hesitate, not out of disrespect, but instinct. The smell is strong. The texture is unfamiliar. The idea of drinking fermented mare's milk kumis feels more like a dare than a meal. Kumis is central to steppe life. Slightly alcoholic, sour, fizzy, it provides calories, hydration, and probiotics. To those raised on it, it is refreshing and sustaining. To you, it is jarring. Your stomach tightens. Your mouth rebels against the taste. And yet, refusing food is not a neutral act. In nomadic culture, sharing food is part of social order. To eat is to participate. To hesitate is to mark yourself as an outsider, someone who does not belong to the rhythm of the group. Hunger leaves little room for dignity, and politeness does not fill an empty stomach. So you eat. Your body struggles to adapt. The high fat content overwhelms digestion. Without fiber, everything slows or rushes unpredictably. Dehydration becomes a quiet threat because milk and fermented drinks replace water more often than supplement it. The dry air pulls moisture from you constantly, and thirst is easy to misjudge. There is no concept of eating lightly. Calories are survival, fat is fuel. Lean food is a liability in cold and constant movement. Even when food is available, it is not plentiful in the way you might expect. Portions are practical, not generous. Tomorrow's hunger is always anticipated. This is another reason settled people faltered quickly. Their bodies were not prepared for nutritional monotony. Vitamin deficiencies set in, weakness follows, illness becomes harder to fight. The steppe does not allow for slow recovery. Food is also unpredictable. Herds can be lost to storms, disease, raids. When that happens, scarcity is immediate. There are no granaries to fall back on, no stored surplus beyond dried meat and curds. Hunger becomes communal. In those moments, animals are bled rather than slaughtered, allowing them to live while providing sustenance. This practice, practical and efficient, is deeply unsettling to someone unfamiliar with it. And yet, it reflects a logic shaped by generations of necessity. The Mongols did not romanticize their diet. They respected it. They understood that survival depended on accepting what the land could offer, not demanding what it could not. You meanwhile find your thoughts drifting toward foods that no longer exist for you. Bread, salt, something sweet, something green. These cravings are not just nostalgia. They are signals from a body trying to return to a nutritional balance it remembers. But memory does not change reality. Eating becomes less about satisfaction and more about discipline. You eat when food is available, not when you are hungry. You eat what is offered, not what you want. Choice disappears quickly, replaced by necessity. Even the act of eating feels different. Meals are not events. They are brief pauses in movement. People eat standing, sitting briefly, then moving on. The day is structured around herds, weather, and travel, not around scheduled meals. This constant adaptation taxes you. Hunger sharpens irritability. Fatigue lowers tolerance. Small discomforts feel larger. The body, already strained by exposure and poor sleep, now struggles to fuel itself properly. And yet, for those who belong here, this way of eating is not deprivation. It is normal. Children are raised on it. Bodies adapt over time, becoming efficient, resilient. The shock you feel is not universal. It is personal. This is an important realization. The Mongol Empire did not survive on brutality alone. It survived on adaptation. Its people were shaped by the steppe long before they shaped history. You are experiencing the cost of not being shaped by it. By the end of the day, hunger no longer feels sharp. It feels heavy, a dull pressure that never fully lifts. You understand now why movement matters, why rest is rare, why weakness is dangerous. Energy is everything. As night approaches again, you notice how food has become another way the land asserts control, not through force, but through limitation. You eat what the steppe allows, or you do not eat at all. And as you lie down, stomach unsettled, mouth dry, thoughts slowed, one truth becomes clear. Here, eating is not about pleasure, tradition, or comfort. It is about keeping the body moving, because in this world, stopping is something you will soon learn you cannot afford to do. And that truth follows you into the next morning, when your body asks for rest, and the world answers by moving on anyway. On the steppe, motion is not a phase between destinations. It is the condition of life itself. You wake to activity, not hurried, not frantic, but constant. Animals are already being gathered. Camps are losing their shapes, felt walls lowered, poles stacked, loads balanced with practiced efficiency. Nothing feels temporary because nothing is meant to stay. The idea of remaining in one place longer than necessary feels almost unnatural here. In a settled world, movement has purpose. To reach a market, a field, a home. On the steppe, movement is purpose. Grazing land must be reached before it is exhausted. Weather must be met before it becomes hostile. Distance is not an obstacle to overcome, but a resource to be managed. There is no word here that quite matches your idea of home. There are family units, seasonal routes, remembered places, but no fixed point where life pauses. Even the yurt, so carefully constructed, is designed to be taken apart. Permanence would be a burden. For you, this constant relocation feels destabilizing. You measure safety by familiarity, by returning to the same place at night, by knowing where you are. The steppe offers none of that reassurance. Each day resets the map in your head, and the effort of reorienting never quite stops. Horses are everywhere. They are not tools in the way you understand tools. They are extensions of the people who ride them. Children learn to sit on a horse almost as soon as they can walk. Distance collapses when measured in horse lengths rather than steps. Here, the horse matters more than the person walking beside it. That priority is not cruelty, it is survival logic. A healthy horse means speed, transport, communication, escape. A person without a horse is limited, slow, exposed. An injured horse is a crisis. An injured person is a problem. This hierarchy is difficult to accept, especially when exhaustion sets in. Your legs ache, your back stiffens, blisters form. You fall slightly behind without meaning to. No one stops. Not out of indifference, but because stopping would endanger everyone else. Movement does not pause for individual weakness. This is one of the hardest lessons for outsiders. In settled societies, illness creates stillness. People gather around the sick. Time slows. On the steppe, sickness creates distance. Those who cannot keep up are left with fewer options, not more. It is not always deliberate abandonment. Sometimes it is simply inevitability. A group cannot afford to linger in poor grazing land. Winter does not wait. Enemies do not wait. Hunger does not wait. The cost of stopping is paid by everyone. So the empire moves. Even at its height, the Mongol Empire was not held together by roads or buildings. It was held together by people in motion. Armies that could travel incredible distances. Messengers who crossed continents. Herds that shifted with the seasons. Movement was coordination. For someone like you, raised to think of travel as effort and rest as reward, this inversion is disorienting. Here, rest is brief and conditional. Movement is assumed. You notice how little time is spent preparing for departure. Everything is already prepared. Loads are standardized. Tasks are shared. There is no ceremony to leaving, because leaving is constant. Staying would require explanation. As the day wears on, the rhythm becomes clearer. Ride, walk, adjust, ride again. Eat quickly, move on. There are no long pauses to admire the landscape. Beauty is acknowledged, but not indulged. The steppe is respected, not romanticized. Fatigue builds quietly. Muscles adapt slowly. Pain becomes background noise. You learn to conserve energy, not because you want to, but because waste has consequences. A stumble can mean delay. Delay can mean separation. Separation, here, is dangerous. There are no safe sidelines, no neutral ground where you can stop and observe. To fall behind is to exit the system that keeps you alive. The land does not care whether that exit is intentional. This is how the empire sustains itself, not through constant force, but through momentum. Orders travel quickly because everyone is already moving. Armies appear where they are least expected because distance is relative. Control is exercised through speed. Even those not involved in warfare live within this logic. The herder, the family, the child, all are participants in a culture that values responsiveness over stability. To hesitate is to become a liability. You may think of escape, of turning aside, slowing down, finding a place to hide. But where would you go? The openness that once felt vast now feels enclosing. Without a horse, without supplies, without knowledge of the land, stopping is not rest, it is exposure. The Mongol world does not trap you with walls. It traps you with emptiness. By late afternoon, your body feels hollowed out by motion. Hunger returns, sharper now. Thirst nags, your thoughts narrow again, and still the group moves. Not fast, not slow. Just forward. This is not cruelty, it is consistency. Children are taught this early. They fall, they get back up, they ride again. Weakness is not punished, but it is not accommodated either. Adaptation is expected. For the empire to function, it cannot slow for individuals. It can only replace them. As the light begins to soften and the day tilts toward evening, you realize that movement here is not a choice you make. It is a demand placed upon you. A test you did not agree to, but must answer anyway. And as you follow the line of riders and herds across the fading grass, one thought settles heavily in your mind. In a world that never stops moving, the greatest risk is not falling, it is being left behind, where law, protection, and mercy no longer reach. And that fear of being left behind slowly changes shape, becoming something heavier, something less physical, as you begin to sense a presence that does not need to be seen to be felt. Somewhere beyond your line of sight, rules are closing in around you, invisible, precise, and absolute. This is the law of the Mongol world, not written for comfort, not argued over, and not softened by circumstance. It is called the yasa. You will not find it carved on stone tablets or posted at crossroads. There is no single scroll you can read to understand it fully. The yasa exists as a living system, carried in memory, enforced through action, and assumed to be known by everyone who lives under it. That assumption includes you. The Yasa was attributed to Genghis Khan, shaped over years of conquest and survival. It was less a legal code in the settled sense, and more a framework for behavior in a world that could not afford ambiguity. Its purpose was simple: preserve order in constant motion. In an empire built on speed, law could not be slow. For someone from a settled society, law often feels like a negotiation. There are courts, procedures, appeals. Time exists between accusation and consequence. Here, time is the one thing the system does not have. Obedience is expected before understanding. The Yasa governs everything that matters to survival: loyalty, theft, desertion, violence, hospitality, hierarchy. Some rules are practical: how to share resources, how to behave during campaigns. Others are symbolic, reinforcing unity and discipline. All of them are enforced. Collective responsibility is one of its most striking features. You are not judged alone. You are judged as part of a group, a family, a unit of 10, 100, 1,000. If one person fails, others may suffer alongside them. This is not accidental. It ensures that discipline is maintained horizontally, not just from above. People watch each other, correct each other, pressure each other to conform. Fear becomes distributed and therefore stable. You begin to notice how rarely commands are spoken aloud. Expectations are already understood. A glance is enough. A pause signals disapproval. Silence itself becomes instructional. There is no allowance for ignorance. Not knowing the law does not protect you from it. In fact, ignorance is treated as a liability. A person who does not understand the rules is unpredictable, and unpredictability is dangerous. Punishments, when they come, are decisive. There is no prolonged trial in the way you would recognize. Evidence is often communal knowledge. Guilt is established through witness, reputation, or immediate observation. Once determined, the response follows quickly. This speed is not cruelty for its own sake, it is prevention. Delay would invite uncertainty. Uncertainty would invite disorder. To you, this feels merciless. To the Mongols, it feels necessary. The steppe does not forgive hesitation, neither does the law that governs it. Some punishments are severe, even fatal. Others are corrective, but public. The goal is not revenge, it is clarity. Everyone must understand where the line is, because crossing it endangers the whole. You might wonder whether mercy exists at all in such a system. It does, but not where you expect it. Mercy appears in predictability, in the knowledge that rules are applied consistently, in the absence of arbitrary whims. The Yasa does not bend easily, but it does not change its mind without reason either. This consistency allows a vast and diverse empire to function. People of different languages, religions, and customs live under the same expectations. They may worship differently, eat differently, dress differently, but obedience is non-negotiable. You feel this pressure even if you never break a rule. The awareness that every action is being measured against an invisible standard shapes your behavior. You speak less. You move carefully. You watch others closely, trying to learn without asking. Asking questions can be risky, not because curiosity is forbidden, but because the wrong question reveals uncertainty, and uncertainty draws attention. The system does not tolerate mistakes well, not because it demands perfection, but because mistakes are contagious. One lapse encourages another. Soon, discipline frays. This is why collective punishment exists. It is not about fairness. It is about containment. For someone like you, used to separating moral responsibility from social consequence, this feels deeply unsettling. You carry not only your own risk, but the risk of others. Their errors can reach you. Your errors can reach them. The result is a constant, low-level tension, a vigilance that never fully relaxes. And yet, this is precisely what allows the empire to move as one. Orders are followed quickly because hesitation has a cost. Loyalty is reinforced because betrayal does not end with the betrayer. Silence is maintained because words have weight. You may notice how little debate occurs. Decisions are not open for discussion. Authority flows downward cleanly. This does not mean leaders are unquestioned, but challenges occur within structure, not against it. To survive here, you must internalize the rules until they feel instinctive. There is no room for improvisation that contradicts the system. Creativity is expressed in adaptation, not rebellion. The law does not care about your intentions, it cares about outcomes. This is another shock for someone from a world where intent matters deeply, where accidents are weighed differently than crimes. On the steppe, consequence matters more than explanation. Harm is harm. Disorder is disorder. As night falls and movement slows briefly, you feel the weight of this invisible structure pressing closer. The land limits your body. Hunger limits your choices. Movement limits your rest. And now, law limits your thoughts. You are not free to act as you wish. You are free to act correctly. This is how the Mongol Empire holds together without walls or cities, not through constant violence, but through an internalized discipline that travels with every person, every horse, every camp. And as you settle into the cold darkness, aware that even mistakes made in ignorance can carry consequences you cannot undo, you begin to understand that survival here does not depend on strength alone. It depends on never stepping outside a system that has no room for error and no patience for those who test its limits. And that system tightens further when the quiet finally breaks, not with chaos, but with purpose. Violence does not arrive here like a storm. It unfolds like a process already underway, revealing that war in the Mongol Empire is not an interruption of life. It is one of its organizing principles. There is no clear moment when peace ends and war begins. The boundary you expect simply does not exist. Campaigns grow naturally out of movement. Raids merge into conquests. Armies form not through dramatic calls, but through expectation. When the order comes, it is not debated. It is fulfilled. You are summoned without ceremony, not because you are special, but because you are present. Choice is not part of the equation. To be within the system is to be available to it. Refusal is not treated as dissent, but as disappearance. This is what makes Mongol warfare feel so relentless to outsiders. There is no mobilization phase in the familiar sense. The empire is always partially mobilized. Weapons are maintained. Horses are trained. People are accustomed to moving together under command. Violence here is structured. Discipline is absolute. Units are organized with precision, each person knowing their position, their responsibility, their limits. Orders are simple and followed exactly. Initiative exists, but only within defined boundaries. Creativity is allowed only if it serves the objective. Fear is used deliberately, not chaotically. The Mongols understood something fundamental. Terror, applied selectively and consistently, could replace prolonged fighting. Cities that resisted were destroyed. Cities that surrendered were often spared. The message traveled faster than any army. You do not witness violence as spectacle. You witness its aftermath. Burned ground, empty streets, silence where people once lived. The absence of resistance becomes as informative as resistance itself. This is not savagery without reason. It is calculation. Cities are not valued for their beauty or culture. They are evaluated for usefulness. Skilled artisans are spared and relocated. Administrators are kept. Engineers are protected. Everyone else is measured against necessity. Prisoners are not simply captives. They are resources, labor, knowledge, leverage. Those who cannot contribute are burdens, and burdens slow movement. This is the harsh arithmetic of empire. For civilians, there is no clear status of neutrality. Living within or near contested space makes you part of the calculation. Supplying food, shelter, information, willingly or not, draws you into the system. Innocence does not function as protection. You begin to understand why settled populations experienced Mongol expansion as overwhelming. Their lives were built around stability. The Mongols brought a system that treated stability as optional. The violence is rarely personal. It is procedural, executed by units, not individuals. Responsibility diffuses through command structures until it feels almost abstract. Orders are followed. Outcomes are accepted. And yet the emotional weight remains. You feel it in the quiet after a city falls, in the way survivors avoid eye contact, in the smell of smoke that lingers longer than expected, in the knowledge that what happened was not a failure of control, but its expression. The Empire does not revel in destruction, but it does not regret it either. Regret would slow the system. Reflection would create hesitation. There is always another objective. For someone like you, this is deeply unsettling. You search for moments of exception, acts of mercy, signs that violence might pause. Sometimes you find them. Sometimes they are real. Often they are temporary, because the structure does not change. War shapes daily life, even far from the front. Supplies are gathered with campaigns in mind. Herds are managed to support armies. Children grow up watching preparation as routine. Stories are told not of peace, but of movement and victory. Even language reflects this. Direction is described in terms of routes taken by armies. Time is remembered by campaigns. The landscape itself becomes a record of conflict. You realize that for the Mongol Empire to function at its scale, violence had to be normalized. Not glorified, but integrated. It could not be an emergency response. It had to be a condition people lived with. This normalization creates distance between action and emotion, between cause and effect, between individual suffering and collective purpose. That distance is protective for those inside the system. It allows them to continue. For those outside it, there is no such buffer. You see now why peaceful life was never truly separate from war. The same discipline that organizes herding organizes armies. The same movement that finds pasture finds enemies. The same law that enforces obedience enforces conquest. Everything is connected. And still, life continues between campaigns. People eat, children play, elders tell stories. This coexistence of ordinary life and organized violence is perhaps the most difficult thing to comprehend. It is not that people are unaware. It is that awareness has been absorbed into routine. As night falls again, the sounds of the camp settle into familiar patterns. Horses shift, fires crackle, voices lower. Somewhere, orders are being prepared for tomorrow. Somewhere else, resistance is already anticipated. You lie awake, understanding now that safety here is not defined by the absence of war, but by alignment with it. To be useful is to be protected. To be irrelevant is to be exposed. And in that realization, another truth emerges. In an empire where violence is structural rather than exceptional, survival depends not on avoiding conflict, but on being carried by the system that creates it, because stepping outside it does not lead to peace, only to silence. And that silence is never empty, because even when no one seems to be watching, the empire already knows where you are. The steppe may look open, unguarded, limitless, but privacy does not exist here. Escape is not a direction you can walk toward. It is an idea the system has already accounted for. You begin to notice it in small ways. A rider appears on the horizon and is gone again before you can decide whether they saw you. News arrives before you expect it to. Orders are known before they are spoken aloud. The distance that once felt vast now feels threaded together by invisible lines. This is the work of the YAM system. The Mongol relay network stretches across the empire like a nervous system. Stations placed at regular intervals, stocked with fresh horses, supplies, and shelter for messengers. Riders move at astonishing speed, carrying commands, intelligence, and reports across thousands of kilometers. What would take weeks elsewhere takes days here. Information travels faster than people. For you, this changes everything. In a settled world, distance offers anonymity. You can leave one town and arrive in another as a stranger. Here, distance collapses. The steppe has no corners to hide in, and the network ensures that movement is noticed, recorded, anticipated. If you run, someone will know. If you linger, someone will ask why. If you disappear, the question will not be where you went, but who is responsible. Responsibility does not stop with the individual. It radiates outward. Families are accountable for their members. Clans are accountable for families. Military units, tens, hundreds, are accountable for every person within them. If one fails, others answer. This shared liability is not symbolic. It is enforced. You feel this pressure constantly. Your actions are not yours alone. A careless word, a delayed movement, an unexplained absence, any of these can draw attention not just to you, but to those around you. That knowledge keeps people aligned more effectively than guards ever could. Fear here is not chaotic, it is structured. The Empire does not need to watch everyone all the time. It only needs to ensure that everyone believes they might be watched, and that consequences will not be isolated. This belief stabilizes behavior across enormous distances. You begin to understand why rebellion was rare and often short-lived. Not because resistance was impossible, but because it was contagious in the wrong direction. One act of defiance could bring punishment down on many. Few were willing to carry that weight. The openness of the steppe, once so intimidating, now feels deceptive. There are no walls, but there are routes. No gates, but checkpoints of expectation. The land itself channels movement in ways you are only beginning to perceive. The yam stations are not just for messengers, they are symbols. Proof that the Empire's reach extends everywhere that matters. Even if you never see one, you feel their presence in the speed at which information moves. This speed becomes a form of control. Rumors do not stay local. News of punishment travels quickly. So do stories of reward. Behavior is shaped not just by direct experience, but by anticipation. You learn what is acceptable by watching what happens to others. You cannot reinvent yourself here. Reputation precedes you. If you arrive somewhere new, questions have already been asked. Your past has a way of arriving before you do. This makes the idea of escape feel increasingly abstract. Where would you go? Beyond the Empire's borders, perhaps, but even borders are fluid. The Mongol world is expanding, absorbing, reclassifying, and the journey itself would expose you to hunger, cold, and lawlessness without protection. Inside the system, you are constrained. Outside it, you are vulnerable. Privacy, in the sense you understand it, dissolves. Life is lived in proximity to family, to herds, to units. Even solitude is temporary. Someone will notice your absence. Someone will ask questions. You become aware of how carefully people manage their visibility. They do not seek attention, but they do not avoid it either. Being known, in the right way, is safer than being unknown. Children grow up within this logic. They learn early that actions echo outward, that belonging offers protection, but also obligation. Individual desire is always secondary to group stability. This is not oppression in the theatrical sense. There are no constant interrogations, no omnipresent guards. The system works because it rarely needs to intervene. Most control happens before action, not after. Fear is not panic, it is calibration. You feel it when you consider slowing down, when you think about leaving a group, when you hesitate before speaking. It guides behavior quietly, efficiently, and yet there is a strange safety in this clarity. Rules are known, boundaries are firm, uncertainty is reduced, even if freedom is limited. For many, this trade-off was acceptable, even desirable. For you, accustomed to imagining escape as an option, this realization is suffocating. The openness of the steppe promised freedom. Instead, it delivers exposure. The Empire does not need to lock you in. It simply makes leaving impractical. As night settles again, you lie under the wide sky, stars sharp and numerous, and feel the weight of connection pressing down. Not physical, not visible, but undeniable. You are part of a web of responsibility and observation that stretches far beyond what you can see. There is no private corner of the Empire, no forgotten edge, no quiet place where actions dissolve without consequence. And in that vast watched silence, you begin to understand that control here is not built on walls or secrecy, but on speed, memory, and shared fear. A system so efficient that even in the open steppe, you are never truly alone and never truly unseen. And in that watched silence, when control feels complete and the sky feels endlessly close, your thoughts turn inward, toward meaning. When escape is impossible and law is absolute, faith seems like the last private refuge left to you. The Mongol world is filled with spirits. They are not distant gods sealed away in temples, but presences woven into the land itself. The sky above you is not just sky, it is Tengri eternal blue heaven, vast, impersonal, watching. The earth beneath you is alive as well, inhabited by forces that must be respected, appeased, never taken lightly. This belief system does not promise comfort, it offers explanation. Shamans interpret signs, the behavior of animals, the pattern of storms, the way fire burns or refuses to burn. Dreams matter, omens matter. Certain places are avoided, certain actions are taboo. The world is full of meaning, but meaning does not equal mercy. For someone like you, this is both familiar and unsettling. You recognize the human need to make sense of suffering, but you also sense immediately that prayer here is not a negotiation. Tengri does not intervene. The Mongols believed that success and failure alike were expressions of fate. Victory meant alignment with heaven's will. Defeat meant the opposite. There was no contradiction between faith and brutality, because both were understood as outcomes already written into the order of the world. If a city fell, it was not only because of tactics or numbers, it was because heaven had withdrawn its favor. This belief created an extraordinary form of certainty. Events did not need moral justification, they needed acceptance. Religious tolerance existed in the empire, and it was genuine. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Taoists, all were allowed to worship. Priests and monks were often exempt from taxes and labor. Temples were spared when cities were not. But tolerance is not protection. Your God, whatever name you give it, does not shield you from hunger, from law, from violence. Belief is permitted because it does not interfere with obedience. The moment it does, it loses its value. This is the quiet limit of tolerance. You realize that faith here is descriptive, not defensive. It explains why things happen. It does not stop them from happening. Taboos are taken seriously. To spill milk on the ground without cause, to wash clothing in running water, to point at the sky with a blade. These actions are avoided, not out of fear of punishment, but out of respect for unseen balance. Breaking a taboo risks misfortune, not because someone will punish you, but because the world itself might respond. And yet, even this cosmic order does not bend for individuals. If you fall ill, it may be fate. If you die, it may be fate. If others suffer because of you, that too may be fate. This acceptance runs deep. Death is not dramatized, it is expected. People prepare for it early, not with despair, but with practicality. Possessions are few, attachments are light. Life is understood as temporary movement through a larger design. For you, raised to treat death as a failure or tragedy, this calm acceptance is disturbing. There is no promise that endurance will be rewarded. No guarantee that virtue will matter. Fate is not fair. It simply is. Prayer, when it happens, is brief, direct, without pleading. People ask for clarity, not rescue, for strength, not exemption. They do not ask Tengri to change the world for them. They ask to understand their place within it. This is why faith does not offer escape. It does not oppose the empire. It aligns with it. Genghis Khan himself was believed to rule with heaven's mandate. His success was proof of divine favor. To resist him was not just rebellion, it was defiance of cosmic order. This belief did not require constant reinforcement. Each victory renewed it. You begin to see how powerful this worldview is. It closes questions before they can fully form. It dissolves doubt into inevitability. When things go wrong, the explanation is already waiting. For many, this is comforting. For you, it is isolating. You search for a moment where belief might soften the edges of reality. A pause, a sanctuary, but even sacred spaces are temporary. A shaman's ritual may interpret your fate, but it cannot rewrite it. A prayer may steady your mind, but it will not slow the system around you. Faith here is not rebellion against power, it is submission to a larger one. As night deepens, the stars feel sharper, more deliberate. The sky seems closer than ever, pressing down with quiet authority. You understand now why the Mongols could endure so much and demand so much of others. Their worldview left little room for protest. Suffering was not meaningless, it was simply not personal. In such a world, hope does not take the form you expect. It is not the hope of rescue or transformation. It is the hope of alignment, of being in the right place, at the right time, doing what is required. And when death comes, as it often does, it is not argued with, it is met. As you lie awake beneath Tengri's endless blue-black sky, you realize that faith has explained the world to you, but it has not protected you from it. It has offered understanding, not safety. And with that understanding settles another quiet truth. If even the gods do not intervene on behalf of the individual, then perhaps the empire does not need to either. A realization that lingers as the night thins toward morning, and the final shape of this system begins to come into focus. And as morning returns once more, thin and pale across the grass, the final shape of the world you have entered becomes clear, not through revelation or drama, but through quiet accumulation. The empire does not look at you. It never really has. This is the last truth to settle in. The Mongol Empire was not built to care about individuals. It did not promise safety, fulfillment, or dignity in the way you understand those words. It promised function, continuity, motion. Everything else was secondary. You have spent days learning what the system demands: endurance without pause, obedience without debate, adaptation without complaint. Now you begin to see why those demands existed. Not to test you, but to filter you. Survival here is not the goal, it is a byproduct. Those who survived did so because they fit the system, not because the system bent to them. The empire did not ask whether life was comfortable. It asked whether life was useful. If you could move, obey, contribute, and endure, you were carried along. If not, the empire did not stop to correct that imbalance. It simply continued. This indifference is not cruelty in the emotional sense. It is scale. The Mongol world operated across distances and populations too vast to account for individual stories. The system was designed to function whether you succeeded or failed. And that is why it worked. The empire moved faster than its rivals. It communicated more efficiently. It adapted more quickly to changing conditions. It integrated conquest, law, logistics, belief, and fear into a single operating logic. Nothing existed in isolation. Everything reinforced everything else. Walls were unnecessary because movement was defense. Courts were unnecessary because obedience was clarity. Excess compassion was unnecessary because predictability was stability. From the inside, this created a strange form of order. Not gentle, not forgiving, but coherent. People knew what was expected. They knew the consequences. They knew where they stood. For those shaped by the steppe, this was not oppression. It was normal life. For you, it is incompatible. You were shaped by assumptions this world does not share. That rest is a right, that food offers comfort, that law negotiates, that faith protects, that privacy exists, that survival is something systems are meant to ensure. None of those assumptions hold here. The Mongol Empire does not hate you for having them. It simply does not recognize them. This is the quiet violence of indifference. Not destruction, but disregard. If you collapse from exhaustion, the system does not mark a failure. It marks an inefficiency resolved. If you disappear, there is no mystery. Someone else fills the space you occupied. Movement continues, orders continue, life goes on. History remembers the empire for its speed, its conquest, its fearsome reputation. But what sustained it day after day was something far less dramatic, a structure that did not pause for human fragility. That is why you would not survive here for long. Not because you lack strength or intelligence, but because the system does not measure those things the way you expect. It measures alignment. You cannot opt out without consequences. You cannot slow down without falling behind. You cannot appeal to mercy that is not designed to exist. And yet, there is no villain to point to. No single moment where things went wrong. The empire does exactly what it was built to do. That realization is unsettling because it removes the comfort of moral resolution. There is no lesson about good or evil here, only compatibility. Some human systems are built for expansion, not care, for continuity, not comfort. They reward those who fit and quietly discard those who do not. The Mongol Empire was one of the most successful examples of such a system ever created. Standing here, at the edge of your understanding, you finally see why resistance often failed, why adaptation mattered more than defiance, why survival was uneven and impersonal. The Empire did not test you. It did not challenge you. It simply did not notice you. Your story does not change its direction. Your suffering does not slow its pace. Your absence does not leave a mark large enough to matter. And that is the final, quiet truth this world offers. You would not fail the Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire would simply move on without you.